And today I am going to take you through a little journey through East Africa, which is Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Rwanda. Yeah, and then at the end, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and then Jefferson will help me to translate, and we will get as much information through to you as possible. Before we start, I just want to give you a little bit of background on Dragonfly Africa as a company. We are a DMC specializing in inbound travel into Southern and East Africa. And we have been around for almost 40 years. So we are quite proud of, our Dragonfly family. And then, of course, all the knowledge and the skill that come with that. Oopsie, sorry for that. There we go. So we do have two divisions to our company. We've got our group side, or the my side, then as well as our leisure side, which is where we originally started 40 years ago. And then very proud to have sales offices all over the world, which of course Avant is one of them. And the nice thing about that is that you've got Jefferson and his team on the same timeline as you, and they know and love our destinations just as much as we do. So they are available for any quick questions that you have for them. And then, like I said, we are based in the destination. So our head office is in Johannesburg. The office that I am in is in Cape Town. And then we also have an office in East Africa, in Nairobi, which is the capital of Kenya. This is just to show you that some of our staff members have been with us for quite some time, which we are very proud of. Like I said, our little Dragonfly family. So I think a lot of clients might ask, but why East Africa? I think the first question or answer for you would be, well, if you've been to South Africa, then East Africa is the natural next step. The destinations in East Africa also have beautiful 5-star hotels in the cities, as well as stunning lodges out in the more remote kind of safari areas. And then the wildlife, the animals, are one of the, or probably the biggest selling point for these destinations. I think it is quite important to remember that Kenya and Tanzania specifically are very African. It's deep, dark Africa. You do not get a lot of venue options. You do not get a lot of nightclub or restaurant options. Everything here is focused around the animals. That is what it's all about. It's about the safari and about the local culture. Now, there is a lot of convenient international flights into the area, into all of the areas that we'll be discussing today. We'll get into a little bit more detail into each of the destinations as we move along. And then, of course, there's your iconic African destinations like Mount Kilimanjaro, which is the highest mountain in Africa, the wildebeest migration or the Great Migration, and then the Ngorongoro crater in Tanzania. And all of the destinations that we are looking at today is very much bucket list, once in a lifetime destinations and experiences. So if it's not on your bucket list yet, I really hope it will be in the next hour. As a DMC, we operate through 12 countries in Southern and East Africa. And this is just a little reminder. Some of you might have joined our presentations on South Africa, as well as our beautiful island destinations. And today we're taking you up to the east to really focus on our beautiful animals. So first up, we are going to be looking at Kenya. Kenya has so much to offer, from the various kind of landscapes to the wildlife, as we discussed, the culture. And interestingly enough, the culture is very, very similar to that of Tanzania. As you will see when we look at the map, these two countries share a border. And this also is the border where the Great Migration takes place. I will show you on one of our other maps a little more how that kind of works. So it's a pretty big country. Well, I mean, it's still smaller than Sao Paulo with 51 million people, and the capital city is Nairobi. They only have two official languages, which is Swahili and English, and then the currency they use is Kenyan shilling. I think a lot of you might already know how to speak Swahili or can say a phrase. We listened to The Lion King just as the presentation started, and the phrase Hakuna Matata is Swahili, and it means no worries, which is what everybody tells you in East Africa. So just a few other quick facts. Your major international credit cards are accepted at all the hotels and lodges. If you go shopping in some of the more remote areas or to local markets, we always recommend that you bring smaller US dollar or Kenyan shillings with you. There are two international airports. The one that we kind of use, or that is the most accessible, is Jomo Kenyatta, which is in Nairobi. And traffic in Nairobi is quite bad. So going from the airport into the city center would take you about an hour, depending on traffic. Unfortunately, for all of the destinations that we are looking today, Brazilian passport holders require visas. A lot of these visas you can apply for on arrival. I think it's only the Tanzanian one that we generally suggest people apply for before traveling. There is also a visa for Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda. It is called the East African visa, and you can apply for one of those to then give you access into all three of those countries. Unfortunately, and I don't know why, this East Africa visa excludes Tanzania. So vaccinations, it's fairly simple. Again, you do need a yellow fever certificate if you are coming from a yellow fever infected area. There is a malaria risk in some of the regions for East Africa, or specifically Kenya and Tanzania, especially if you go on safari. So we always ask that you look to chat to your local travel clinic or your doctor to just get the correct advice and medication before traveling. Best times to visit Kenya, your hottest months are typically December and January, with your wettest months March, April, and May. The Great Migration, which happens between Tanzania and Kenya, is generally August, September, October. In the last year or so, this period has moved a little bit earlier, but again, it is one of those, it's nature. It's not something that we can really put a date on, but that's generally kind of the time that the animals are moving. And then your best time to go on safari is typically from June to the end of October. That being said, the last time I went to Kenya was in May, which was meant to be rainy season. We had the most incredible time. We had the best weather. We saw tons of animals, and we did not have a drop of rain. So one of kind of our selling points as a DMC, and the fact that we have an office in Kenya, really helps us to make suggestions when would be best for your clients to visit. So your climate averages, you will see, contrary to popular belief, it does not get extremely hot in Kenya. You are just kind of above the equator, so you would expect it to be very hot, but your temperatures are actually quite nice. During your winter season, it does go a little bit colder, but that's generally quite late at night. So Kenya is quite a large area. There's a lot of different areas that you could visit. On the incentive side, a program that works very well for me is to fly into Nairobi. Like I said, you've got Jomo Kenyatta Airport there. It is a very, very big airport. The likes of Emirates, Qatar, those Middle Eastern carriers fly into Nairobi as well. From Brazil, I would still say that it is probably best coming via Johannesburg with LATAM. Nairobi is about a 5-hour flight from Johannesburg, and you can easily connect on your way there. It's going back to Brazil that you will most likely have a forced overnight in Johannesburg. So just keep that in mind when you are looking at your programs. For Kenya, for the program that I'm going to tell you about today, I reckon about 5 or 6 nights would be the perfect duration, depending on how much you move around. So keeping in mind that the whole of Tanzania and Kenya very much looks like that image of Africa that you have in your mind. It's dust, it's sand, it's savannas, large open areas, not a lot of people, local villages all over. I call it, it looks like the Lion King. When you've watched the Lion King, you kind of know what to expect. But it's a really, really large area to cover. So getting from point A to point B in kilometers might not be that far, but your roads are very bad once you are out of the city. So we always recommend, if your budget allows, to fly from the various points. So in my mind, a very, very nice program is if you arrive into Nairobi and you spend the night in the city. There's not a lot to do in terms of night clubbing and restaurants and venues, like I've said, but it just gives you, it's a good welcome into Kenya, and it gives you a good little bit of orientation into the country. Also, you've been traveling the whole day, so you just want your guests to relax and settle down, have a nice meal, and then the next day we go full on. So from there, I would fly to Mount Kenya. Mount Kenya has a really, really beautiful lodge, which I'll show you in a minute. But there's so much to do there, and I would definitely spend about 2 nights there. And from there on out, you fly into the Masai Mara, where you spend another 2 or 3 nights on safari. And then you'd have to go back to Nairobi to then go or start making your way back home. So the Great Rift Valley and the Amboseli National Park, also two absolutely gorgeous areas. It just offers you a little bit of a different experience, and I do believe that for those areas, they are a little bit more kind of leisure FIT focused. The FIT guests can, of course, do Nairobi, Mount Kenya, the Masai Mara as well, but in terms of an incentive program, I would stick to Mount Kenya and the Masai Mara. So I'm not going to go into our safari map too much, but I will be sending this to you after our presentation. But our safari map shows you the various areas with the lodges and the amount of rooms per lodge or per tented camp. And then the migration pattern on the right-hand side of the screen is just to give you an indication how the animals move through Kenya and mostly through Tanzania throughout the year. These are wild animals. They do not stop. They keep on moving throughout the year depending on the weather and depending on the availability of food. So if you tell me I want to come in February, but you know that the migration is only later in the year, we will then make a decision and a suggestion as to where to put your group or your guests, where they will see the most animals.
Nat, just one question.
Yes.
Just one question that I think is important. How long in advance do you think someone should book this experience in Kenya if they want to see the migration, for example? If we're talking about a group, a small group, 10, maybe 20 people maximum, how long in advance do you think we should book? Because as far as I know, these get fully booked very, very early.
Yes, absolutely. Generally, and like you said, usually it is smaller groups, because if you look at the map on the left-hand side, you'll see that the lodges are a lot smaller than that in South Africa, meaning they get booked up very quickly. So the earlier you can book, the better. Specifically for the Great Migration, which is this river crossing on the right-hand side, I would say minimum a year in advance. sometimes even longer. What I always like to also tell people is that even though the Great Migration is something phenomenal to see, it is it's a scary experience because you get all these wildebeest that run through the river, and of course there are lions and crocodiles and hippo, and they all try and catch the wildebeest. So it is a little bit of a buffet lunch, if you want to say. So not everybody likes that. And also both of the national parks, the Serengeti in Tanzania, as well as the Mara in Kenya, they are public parks. So there is no kind of control as to how many vehicles can watch the spectacle. You can be lucky with either 15 vehicles or you can be unlucky with 200 vehicles. So we have to remember that people migrate as well. And if you do visit the region in a different time of the year, you might not see the actual river crossing, but you will still see massive, massive, massive herds of animals still migrating through the country. But like Jefferson said, please book early. Just to quickly look at some of the accommodation options, the 4 Points is new in Nairobi, and it is actually located on the airport grounds. So you don't leave the airport grounds to go into the city, to go to the hotel. And this is very nice, like I said, on your last night of the program, to come back into Nairobi and spend the night before you fly out. Here you don't have to deal with any traffic. The food at this hotel is phenomenal, and it is brand new, so it is a really good option. Another great option, which is my favorite city hotel in Nairobi, is Fairmont the Norfolk. And I'm sure a lot of you are already very familiar with the Fairmont brand. It is a popular international brand, and I can assure you that the service and standard levels in Kenya is the same as the Fairmonts we know worldwide. The nice thing about this particular property is that it is located in beautiful gardens that you can do quite a lot with. And they also have 2 very, very nice restaurants, one of which is a fine dining restaurant. So you can certainly incorporate this as a group kind of dinner option. For me, a first night in Nairobi, this is a very, very good option, because then also you can link it up with the Fairmont Mount Kenya Safari Club. This is the one that I said is a very nice property to spend 2 nights at. It's a colonial style property, again, beautiful gardens. They've got a golf course, they have helicopter flights on site, beautiful views of Mount Kenya. And here they also have an animal orphanage where you can visit and then learn about all the local animals. Together with this, I will definitely combine the Fairmont Mara Safari Club. And the reason why I'm kind of giving you these 3 in a row is because if you book these 3 properties together, you get like a combination rate. So it really does help with the budget, because you have to also remember that the whole of East Africa, the kind of main trading currency is US dollars. So immediately it becomes a little bit more expensive. So if you can work with combination rates, sticking to one kind of property throughout, that will really help your budget. So the Mara Safari Camp or Club, which I love about it, is that you are in a tent. And these tents are really nice. It's not a camping experience. You do have a real toilet. You have a real shower, and the beds are so comfortable, and all of the tents overlook the Mara River. It really is a very, very special experience. It works very well for larger groups. It has 50 tents, so it has the capacity of 100 people. You have the choice of taking it over exclusively, or of course doing smaller groups here. Then another option is the And Beyond Kichwa Tembo Tented Camp. Now, getting to this one, you would have to fly from Nairobi preferably in a charter plane to the Kichwatembo airstrip, and from there you would then transfer in a safari vehicle to the tented camp. Again, beautiful tents with ensuite facilities, and another great option for a group. Then Angama Mara. So I don't know if anybody has seen the Out of Africa movie. It's quite an old African movie with, I think it was Barbara Streisand that was in there. But there, in the movie, there's this famous picnic scene where they sit and they have this beautiful view, very romantic. And that exact spot is where this lodge has been built. Actually, that is where this deck with a fireplace is. So it's a very special place to go. It has the capacity of about 60 people with 30 tents. In all honesty, I think one of these tents are bigger than my entire house. It is absolutely beautiful. I have not been able to go there myself, unfortunately. It is still a fairly new lodge, but Angama Mara is definitely at the very, very top of my bucket list. For this lodge, again, you will fly into the Kichwatembo airstrip, and from there you do a safari to get to the lodge. So in terms of activities for Kenya, you will see that I combined the Tanzanian and Kenyan activities towards the end of Tanzania, but in Nairobi itself, there is quite a lot to do. I would not necessarily do your entire program in Kenya, because I do think that your clients will get a little bit, not bored, but there's not a lot to do for an extended period of time. There is the Karen Blixen Museum for people interested in a little bit of history into the country. There's the David Sheldrick Animal Orphanage, where specifically you can adopt an orphaned elephant. You adopt it and then pay for his support and upkeep, but you do get to meet the elephant, which is pretty special. There's the Giraffe Center, where you get to learn a lot about our beautiful and tall African giraffes. You also get to kiss them and feed them. And then there are quite a few kind of local markets in and around town that is a lot of fun to visit. A lot of beading or beaded jewelry is something that you absolutely have to purchase when you go to Kenya. It's very, very local and very popular. And then also, if you look at this picture with this is called a Maasai warrior, and these guys live traditionally within their villages to this day, and this is what they dress like every day. And these kind of material that you see here, they are called shukas, and you can also buy them in Kenya and Tanzania. They make amazing blankets, tablecloths, picnic blankets. I wear mine as a scarf, so you can really get creative, and they make really, really nice client gifts. So moving on to Tanzania.
May I do a question before?
Please do.
Someone here has asked if there are tents that migrate together with the animals, like this mobile tent. I don't know if that's the right expression.
There's one company. Yeah, there is one company that does that. But they only set up camp once a client has requested and paid for it. They don't constantly move around, so they basically set up where you want to be and when you want to be there. It is not extremely popular amongst groups in our markets that we've seen, purely because it is a huge setup. So they then have to bring in the necessary rangers, security, dining tents, ablutions, all of that, and generally have to set up almost a week before the group arrives. And of course, the client has to pay for all of that. So it does become quite an exclusive and costly affair. So we have not seen that it has been very popular, but the option is definitely out there. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Okay. So the same applies in Tanzania as well, because as you would have seen on the safari map earlier, a big part of the year you find the migration in Tanzania. But Tanzania also has a lot more options in terms of different permanent lodges that you can visit during this time. So just before we go into kind of the country facts for Tanzania, I just want to share with you what I think makes Tanzania so incredibly special. Firstly, Zanzibar, the beautiful island, is actually part of Tanzania as a country. Mount Kilimanjaro is in Tanzania. And then also the Ngorongoro crater, which is a massive volcanic crater from a million years ago, which is extremely popular for safari. So there is quite a lot of different kind of points and areas that you can visit in Tanzania. And then, of course, being East Africa's largest country, it has a massive capital called Dar es Salaam. And this Dar es Salaam it's like Nairobi. It's a very big city. The traffic is chaotic. It's very much like Sao Paulo traffic, actually. But it's also a really big meetings and conferencing destination. A lot of the hotels, most of them in the city actually, has really big and state-of-the-art conference facilities. So please do keep that in mind if you have a client that is looking at doing a meeting component in an incentive moving forward and they are looking to do something completely different. So Tanzania is a little bit bigger than Kenya with 56 million people. And I was wrong. The capital city is not Dar es Salaam. It's called Dodoma. Sorry about that. And then the same as Kenya, their two official languages are Swahili and English. They use the Tanzanian shilling. And the same as with before, all hotels and lodges accept international credit cards. But if you go shopping in the smaller markets, always take smaller local currency or cash with you. So Julius Nyerere International Airport is based in Dar es Salaam. This is the main airport where South African Airways used to fly into, Emirates, all of the big kind of Middle Eastern airlines. And then again, due to traffic, it takes you about 1 hour to get from the airport into the city center. You also have Kilimanjaro International Airport, which is based in Arusha. Arusha is a very small town, which is kind of known as the gateway to the Serengeti. And this is also about just under 2 hour flight from Dar es Salaam. So coming from Brazil, again, I would say it is probably best flying via Johannesburg. Johannesburg and Dar es Salaam also is about 5 hours from one another. And from there, you can then either fly on a scheduled flight to Kilimanjaro, or as we call it, Kili, or you can fly into Arusha Domestic Airport, and there are various charter options around or available as well. Then they also have an airport, an international airport in Zanzibar. Qatar flies into Zanzibar. One of the South African low-cost carriers called Mango also flies into Zanzibar, as well as Fly Dubai. And Zanzibar is about a 30-minute flight from Dar es Salaam. You can take a ferry. The ferry across will take you approximately 3 hours. So for our FIT leisure clients, some of them like to do that because it's quite a local experience, whereas all of our group clients prefer to rather fly across to Zanzibar. So again, you would need a visa to visit Tanzania, and we would recommend that you apply for this e-visa prior to coming to East Africa. Your vaccinations are the same as Kenya. You do need a yellow fever certificate if you are coming from an infected area. Remembering that your yellow fever certificate is now valid for a lifetime and not just 10 years as previous. It is important actually for all of our East African countries that if you are coming from a foreign language country, for example, Brazil, your yellow fever certificate needs to be translated into English to just show the authenticity. Then Tanzania, where we will be going on safari in the Serengeti. This is a malaria area, so again, please visit your doctor or your travel clinic before coming on your safari. So your seasons and kind of weather patterns are very similar to that of Kenya. Your hottest months remain January and February, with your rain following shortly after. You do have a short rain period in November as well, which is almost like a monsoon rain. It's very short bursts. And then for the migration, you will catch them coming out of Tanzania in June typically, and then they spend some time in Kenya, and then they come back towards the end of September. For those clients of ours feeling adventurous, and they are mostly our FIT leisure clients, a really good times to climb Mount Kilimanjaro would be January, February, March, June, July, August, September, and December. And this is definitely something that we can help you with. We can assist you with all of your gear, your rentals, everything from the minute you get here till the minute you leave. Your climate averages are quite a lot higher than Kenya, being closer to the equator. So on a really hot day, you are looking at 35 degrees with a minimum temperature of 25. When it does cool down a little bit, you are going to approximately 27 in the day and 18 at night. So again, your temperatures are really, really nice. Map of Tanzania. So like I said, you would most probably fly into Dar es Salaam, which is on the east coast, closest to Zanzibar. And from there, you will go into Arusha to then make your way to either Mount Kilimanjaro or to the Serengeti National Park. There are a lot of flights between Nairobi and Dar es Salaam as well. There are flights between the Serengeti and Zanzibar. You can fly from Arusha to Zanzibar. So once you are in East Africa, there are quite a lot of flights or local flight options that you could consider. Again, your distances to cover by road is quite big. I mean, you generally don't want your clients to be sitting in a car for 8 hours or more to get to their destination. So we always recommend flying. You will see on the safari map that I will be sending you after the presentation, we have put driving distances and flying times on there for you to use as a reference. For Tanzania, it's tricky to say how many nights I would suggest, purely because there is so much to do and see, and different clients have different interests. And that being said, I actually forgot to tell you earlier that all of the itineraries that come out of our office are 100% tailor-made. It is all created specifically for your client, whether MICE or FIT and leisure. We do not do set departures. We can assist for FIT and leisure clients if that is the route that they would want to go. So generally, you will fly into Dar es Salaam, spend your first night there or in Arusha, and then go into the Serengeti. Here, I would comfortably spend about 3 nights. And then if you wanted to go to the Ngorongoro crater, you can spend another 2 nights there. You could even spend 2 nights in Arusha. So it really just depends on the profile of your client, the budget, and the time they are willing to spend in East Africa. So here is the safari map for Tanzania again. So similar to the one we looked at for Kenya, we kind of showed you the lodges on the left-hand side of the screen with the amount of rooms. Again, you will see these camps or tented camps or lodges are a lot smaller than what we are used to in South Africa, for example. What is very exciting with Tanzania is the fact that we have a Four Seasons in the middle of the Serengeti. You will see if you look at the map, it's number 5. So it really is right in the middle over there. And for me, it is just the most incredible thing that you have that Four Seasons luxury that you get in all the other big cities around the world. But this time, you are in the middle of absolutely nothing. How they do it, I don't know, but they do a fantastic job, and it is one of the most beautiful lodges that I have ever been to. So starting in Dar es Salaam, just to look at a couple of the properties there, you do have some international brands that you already might know, might be familiar with. The first one is the Hyatt. It is a really, really beautiful hotel situated on the water of Dar es Salaam. Excuse me. It is about an hour's drive from the airport. And as you can see, it is quite a nice size as well. There are some smaller, more boutique style properties for those leisure FIT clients. I have not included them in my presentation, but we can assist you with suggestions. Then 4 Points by Sheraton in Arusha, also a new property. This one is actually in the center of town and not like the Kenyan one close to the airport. This one is close to the Maasai market, which is right in the center of town. Then the Grand Melia Arusha. This one, if I'm not mistaken, if I don't have my dates incorrect, they opened at the end of last year. And this was actually going to be a Hyatt as well, but they are now part of the Melia family, the Melia Familia. They also have a property in the Serengeti. So again, we could assist you with really nice combination rates between the two areas. Now, moving into the crater, once I send you the safari map, you'll also get a good indication of where the crater is in relation to Arusha and the Serengeti. But this is actually one of the destinations or areas in Tanzania that you can drive to from Arusha. It is about a 3-hour drive. You do have the option of flying there as well. And the roads, I must say, is very good actually on this. I've done this drive before and it was a very pleasant experience and absolutely beautiful driving through the Tanzanian countryside. And beyond, I don't think I have to tell you a lot about it. It's a really, really nice kind of hotel chain, and they do things very well. So this is the Four Seasons. It is quite a large property, but it is built kind of in different little sections so that if you do have a smaller group or FIT leisure clients, it does not feel like they are in a big international hotel. There's a lot of dining options at this hotel specifically. And the great thing is you see the watering hole in front of the swimming pool. This is actually where elephants come on a daily basis to drink water. I was there last year in November and I took the most incredible videos with my phone. So maybe as a follow-up, I'll share some of my personal video experiences. And then just something on the smaller side, which is a bit more suited for our FIT leisure clients, is the Serengeti Explorer Camp. And this is actually one of those options. They set up in 2 different mobile or different locations and is seen as a mobile camp. So this one is also actually not operational when the migration is not active in Tanzania. Like I said, the Milia Serengeti Lodge works very, very well in combination with the one in Arusha. The Serengeti is about just over an hour's flight from Arusha, so it is very easy to get there. The airport in the Serengeti is a very tiny hut and an airstrip. There's nothing else there. It is quite an interesting experience. And typically it's about an hour's safari from the airport into the various lodges. Now, when we quickly chatted about Kenya, I said I was going to show you all of the activities that you could do in both areas. Your kind of safari-focused elements in Kenya and Tanzania are very similar. So first, and one that I can personally recommend, is the hot air balloon. For me, I've been very fortunate. I've done it in Tanzania before, and it was, you get to a point where you can smell the animals, you can hear them, you can see them, you want to cry, you want to laugh, you want to put it on Facebook, you want to phone your mom, and then you catch yourself and you just stand there and you just watch. And this generally happens very early in the morning, and this is truly the type of scenery and amount of animals that you see. So your animals in South Africa and East Africa are the same. There's the big five everywhere you go, except that in South Africa, the numbers you see are a lot smaller than the ones in East Africa. And in East Africa, your terrain is very different. Like I explained, it's almost like the Lion King. You can see for days. When in South Africa, your area is a lot smaller, it's got lots more bushes and trees, so it just looks very different. Some of the safari lodges in East Africa still use the open vehicles, depending on where you go. Different lodges have different vehicles, and some of them might be completely closed Land Rovers, and this is purely because of the distance you cover and the amount of dust. So the closed vehicle really is just a little bit more comfortable. Here you generally have the option of doing a morning or an afternoon safari, again about 3 or 4 hours long. You also have the option of going on a full day safari where your ranger will pack you the most beautiful picnic lunch, and then you will pick an area in the middle of nowhere. The ranger will make sure everything is safe, and then you will get out and have a lovely picnic lunch. Interestingly enough, and I don't know why, but Kenya and Tanzania also has tree climbing lions. So don't always look on the ground. Please also look up in the trees, because the lions might be taking a nap in the tree. Gorogoro Crater, this is the typical scene that you can expect when you are staying at the Crater Lodge and you are moving down into the crater for your safari. They have the big five, but they also have millions of pink flamingos, which makes it a very, very special site. Great Migration, like I explained earlier, this is, yeah?
Now, there's a question about Nguruguru character. Someone asked if is it dangerous to drive to the character? It's about 3 hours drive. What do you say?
No, it's not dangerous at all. What we do not recommend self-drive because it is quite a distance, and if you do not know the area, it might be easy to get lost. So what we do is we arrange a very comfortable luxury safari vehicle with a driver guide to collect your guests in Arusha, and they will then drive the clients into the crater area. Just because of distance, and it's such a beautiful drive. You want to look out the window and let someone else do the driving.
Cool.
Just so to get back to the migration, it's exactly like I said earlier. You've got the wildebeest, which is this funny looking animal that you are seeing on the screen, and this is when they cross the Great Mara River from Tanzania into Kenya in search of food, and then later the year they come back. Yeah.
Another question regarding the migration now, it's what's the best option to see the migration? Is it Kenya or Tanzania, Serengeti, combined with Zanzibar? I mean, I would like for you to answer that.
It depends on the time of the year that you are going. If you are going, let's say July, August, it is generally better to view the migration from the Kenyan side. Other times of the year, if you are looking at, let's say, November through to June, I would say Tanzania. And we will then help you to choose a lodge in the area where the migration is at that time of the year. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Right. So the Maasai warriors, these guys sound very scary, but they are actually shepherds. And this is just the way that everybody in their village dresses. They wear these beautiful red shukas. And if you look closely at the photo, you will see that their shoes are made of tires that you use on a car. So they upcycle quite a lot of the materials that they get. And they are a very interesting bunch. You will always see them looking like this, even if they are not with your guests. This is just what they look like. And they have the most incredible dance routine. They jump extremely high. And this is a very, very nice kind of form of entertainment to introduce to clients when they are in the country. A lot of these guys do not speak English at all, but it is quite fun to try and interact with them. They love the international guest visiting their country. So there's a lot of hand signals and high fives and kind of body language to try and understand each other. With South Africa, bush dinners are widely done in Kenya and Tanzania, and some of the lodges even have Boma dinner options. A bush dinner I like to suggest on the very final night of a group, purely because I think that it is the best way of saying goodbye to Africa. You dine under the African sky, you sit outside in the middle of nowhere. You've got all these fires and lanterns and candles burning, and it's just a really nice place to sit and to share your African adventures and just to bring the whole program together. Then CSR, corporate social responsibility through all of our destinations is something that a lot of our clients often ask us about. And being Africa, the need is really big. So if us as a company, as Dragonfly Africa, we do support a variety of projects throughout all of our destinations. So we can certainly help you come up with something really creative and a great way to give back to local communities if your client is interested. It could be in various forms. So it's either building a library or starting a vegetable garden or just going and playing soccer with the children or spending some time in their classrooms. So again, because there is so much need, there is an opportunity to create really, really memorable moments with your clients throughout Southern and East Africa.
Nat, and before we move ahead and go into Uganda, one question that we had was regarding prices in Kenya and Tanzania. The question was, how much money on average does a tourist spend by day on meals, tours, and transport in Kenya and Tanzania?
Oh, that's a very difficult question. It very much depends where you go, because if you are on safari, generally it is all inclusive. So once you've paid for your accommodation, that includes all of your safaris, your meals, and then a thing to always remember with Kenya and Tanzania is the fact that you have to pay conservation levies for all the national parks that you are visiting. Normally, this fee is included in your flight tickets as well as your accommodation rate. So There's always that to look out for. If you are in the cities, it is a bed and breakfast rate. So yeah, it's quite a difficult question for me to answer because it really depends where you go. But what I will do is I will send you a one of our sample flyers after the presentation to give you an idea what a program in that region would cost you. In my experience, once you are there and your accommodation is taken care of, everything else is very, very affordable. If you eat in a local restaurant, it is very cheap, even for us South Africans. And we share the same currency woes as the Brazilians. So your local food and drinks are very cheap. It is just your accommodation, which is a little bit more than what we used to in South Africa because of the US dollar and because it is generally all inclusive.
Thank you, Nat. Let's go to Uganda now.
Yes, so now we go to my absolute favorite part. I have almost resigned and moved to Uganda because Uganda and Rwanda, these are just the most incredible places in the world. It's the beautiful, it's the cleanest, and once you go there, you will not want to go home. I can promise you that. And what makes these two destinations so special for me is obviously the gorillas, but I don't know anyone personally other than clients that has ever been to Uganda or Rwanda. It is a very, very unique and special place to go to. And also, it is for those clients of ours, whether groups or FIT, that have done absolutely everything and they are looking for that ultimate wow experience. Then I can promise you Uganda and Rwanda is exactly what they are looking for. It is not for big incentive groups. All of your properties are very small unless you go into the big cities where you get your big international hotels. But now as we move through the presentation, I'll point these out to you. So Uganda is a landlocked country in East Africa. It borders Kenya, South Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, as well as Rwanda and Tanzania. So you really are in the middle of East Africa. A big part of the country is Lake Victoria, which I believe is the biggest lake in Africa. And you can also see this lake in Kenya and Tanzania. And also a very interesting fact is the Nile River originates in Uganda. So it's a pretty small country with 36 million people, more or less. The capital city is called Kampala, and they also only speak English and Swahili. They use the Ugandan shilling, and again, credit cards are everywhere. You use your smaller cash for your local market shopping. And which is interesting is that the airport is actually not located in the capital city of Kampala. The airport is in a place called Entebbe, which is, it's probably about, depending on traffic, an hour outside of Kampala, about 40 kilometers. Yeah, you've got a lot of major airlines also still flying into Entebbe. It is a lot smaller airport than the likes of Dar es Salaam and Nairobi, but still very much on international standard. Visa requirements here. Brazilians do require a visa, but this can be obtained on arrival. And then in terms of your vaccinations, here you would need a yellow fever certificate. And that is for all vegetables, all visitors, not just coming from an infected area. Malaria is also a risk in Uganda, specifically if you go on safari. If you go to the gorillas, however, it is not an issue because of the elevation. You are quite high up where you are not affected by mosquitoes. So January, February, March, you're looking at your hottest months, with April and May typically being your rainy season. Very good time for gorilla trekking is January, February, June, July, August, and September. I went last year in November and had a phenomenal time. You do also have the option of going on a Big 5 safari in Uganda, which typically is February, March, and then September and the beginning of October. Climate averages, again, very kind of mild climate, not too hot as one would expect. And here, your access, like I said, is Entebbe, which again is about a 6-hour flight from Johannesburg. Very easy to get there. And Emirates, Qatar, Turkish, KLM, those big guys also fly into the airport. Again, I think we would just have to reassess all of these flights post-COVID, but generally your access into the area is very easy. You can also fly from your other African destinations, for example, Nairobi, Kigali in Rwanda. You can come from Ethiopia, even from Dar es Salaam in Arusha in Tanzania. So before I get to the properties, I just want to give you a little bit of an overview into the various kind of regions in Uganda. So for your FIT leisure clients, I feel there is a lot more to do because they typically have more time. You can easily fill a 2-week program with only being in Uganda. You have your Big 5 safari in the Queen Elizabeth National Park. You can go to the source of the Nile. You can do some bungee jumping, some whitewater river rafting. You can do chimpanzee trekking. You can spend some time in Entebbe as well as in Kampala in the city center, and then end off your trip with the gorillas. If you had an incentive client that wanted to get in and out, that just wanted to come for the gorillas, I would say definitely 3 or 4 nights. Your first night would be in Entebbe, and then we would fly you to Buwindi Impenetrable Forest, where you will spend 2 nights, and then come back to the city for another night before flying out to wherever you are flying to. So Entebbe, even though it is outside of the city, they do have quite a lot of really, really nice, beautiful properties. Hotel number 5 is one where I stayed at last year. It is quite small and it almost feels like you're staying or you're visiting a friend's house. The rooms are really lovely. They've got this beautiful garden with a pool, and the service is just phenomenal. Everybody in Uganda and Rwanda was born with a smile on their face, and that smile remains until the day that they pass away. These people are the friendliest people that you can possibly find on earth, I think. You do have larger properties, like I said, when you go into the larger cities. Kampala Serena Hotel is a big one, 152 rooms. This one is also connected to the Kampala Serena International Conference Center. I've done a really big meeting there of 500 people before, where we actually had the Ugandan president come out, which was quite an experience. But please, if you do have a client that has a meeting component or a conferencing group, please do not forget these little bit more remote destinations. The East Africans love to conference. Speak Resort is another option. This one is kind of, if you're coming from the airport side, you drive through Kampala, out the other end of town, and you get to this beautiful resort. Again, it is quite large with 152 rooms, but they do have probably the most updated or newest conference facilities in the whole of Uganda. Now, Mahogany Springs is kind of, it's in the gorilla area, in the Buwindi Impenetrable Forest. And getting to this area from Entebbe is an hour's flight. The planes are very small because of the tiny airports and airstrips you land at in this region. So, for example, the flight that I was on last year had 10 seats. So very, very small aircraft. There are scheduled flights, charter flights. We always strongly recommend, because then you can dictate the timings of the group, which works very well. But so you will fly from Entebbe to a place called Kihihi, and from Kihihi, transferring to Mahogany Springs and where all the other lodges are based is about 40 minutes to 1 hour, but you do it in a luxury safari Land Rover. And you then really get to see a little bit of the countryside and how the local people live. Mahogany Springs is a very special lodge. It's small. All of them are very small. And this one is actually owned by a guy from the UK. All of the lodges here are very similar in offering. They all differ in price, anything from, let's say, $300 per person and up. They are all fully inclusive, and that means that they pack your lunch for when you go gorilla trekking as well, and they all normally include laundry services as well. Something that's quite special is the night or the day that you come back from your gorilla trek, they actually wash your shoes, and my shoes have never been that clean before. So at least when you go home, you have some clean shoes to take back. So Tracker Safari Lodge, this is the one where we stayed at last year. It has 11 rooms in total, and they are all exactly the same except for room number 10 and room number 11. They are kind of like the VIP suites. They're just a little bit bigger. The nice thing just about this one is that it is only 15 minutes from where you start your gorilla trekking. And again, it's about an hour's drive from Kihihi, where your flight will stop. Buhoma Lodge. This one is only one of 2 lodges that is in the Burundi impenetrable forest. So if you are lucky, you might actually get a gorilla coming into the grounds of the property. Generally, it's a little bit loud and busy for the gorillas with all the people around, but it has happened before, so you don't even have to go on a trek. The only thing to remember with Buhoma Lodge, it's small, it's got 10 rooms. They have 1 accessible room, which is actually this one here on the left at the bottom. All of the other rooms have a lot of stairs to climb. So if you do have older clients or people with mobility issues, this would not be your first choice of lodge. But again, we as your local ground operators are there to help you make these decisions based on all the information you give us. Sanctuary Gorilla Forest Camp. This is the other lodge that is based in the forest where the gorillas live. And this one is tents. So last year when we were there, they were actually busy building another 2 tents. So hopefully that'll be soon finished in the months coming, and then they'll be able to accommodate 20 people. Like I said, your activities in Uganda very much depends on the region that you go to, but you do have Big 5 safari in certain areas. You can do some whitewater rafting on the Nile River for those feeling adventurous. You can bungee jump. There's really a lot to do, and I will get into the gorilla trekking a little bit when we get to the end of Rwanda. So Rwanda is kind of known as the land of 1,000 hills, or the Switzerland of Africa. It is honestly the cleanest and most beautiful place that I've ever seen in my life. They have banned, or plastic bags is completely illegal, which they actually take off of you when you arrive at the airport as well. It is a very, very small country with only 12 million people. The capital city is Kigali. And here we have 3 official languages. The first one is Kinyarwanda, French, and English. They use the Rwandan franc as their main currency, and Kigali International Airport is their main airport. It's about 14 kilometers from the CBD. It takes you about half an hour. Traffic in Kigali is surprisingly not that bad. So most visitors coming into the country can obtain a visa before entering Rwanda. Brazilian passport holders do require visas. Sorry, I've just gone completely blank. What I want to say is that remember that Uganda and Rwanda is, together with Kenya, is part of the East African visa that you can apply for before coming. Vaccinations, here we need yellow fever certificates if you are coming from an infected area. And again, malaria is a risk in certain regions. However, it is low risk when you go gorilla trekking. Here, your hottest month is typically in August, with your rainy season in April. And then good time for gorilla trekking is January, February, June, July, August, and September. Climate averages a little cooler than in Uganda, but still really, really nice. So access, Kigali is your main kind of hub, and this is where your international flights all come into. Again, very easy flight from Johannesburg in South Africa, also from Entebbe, Nairobi, Dar es Salaam, all of your kind of main hubs in East Africa. Rwandair is the home carrier, and they do quite a lot of most of your regional flights within the country. International airlines like Air France, Qatar, Turkish, etc., all fly into Kigali as well. Then just a little bit of a side note, typically when you leave Kigali Airport, visitors are requested to pay a departure tax of $20 US. Just as a DMC, we usually include this fee in either your airline ticket or somewhere else in your costing, but please just always keep this in mind, and maybe just something to flag with your clients so that they don't feel like they didn't expect it or wasn't prepared. So your Serena Hotel Kigali is one of those big, more international properties in the heart of the city. It is a beautiful hotel with a phenomenal spa, and it really is a good kind of blend if you look at all the history and just the Rwandan culture. It also has really good conference facilities if that was something that your client was interested in. And then just before I go into the sort of gorilla area, there's another hotel that is very famous in Kigali, and I'm not sure if anyone has seen the movie Hotel Rwanda. It's not a happy movie. It's very, very sad and quite brutal. But if you ever wondered about the Rwandan history, which is a very young history actually, and the Rwandan genocide, which happened 25 years ago, that movie is a very good starting point. Just be prepared, it is quite hectic. Bring the tissues. But the hotel where the movie was shot and where everything was based, and where a lot of the refugees went to stay during the time of the genocide, is actually still in the CBD. It is not necessarily the type of hotel that we would recommend for our clients to stay at. I feel like the service and standard levels are not quite high enough, but we went there for lunch and a drink, and it was a really, really cool experience. You have to just pop your head in and say that you've been there, and they do have a very good lunch offering and a beautiful bar. So going into the gorilla area, here you can actually drive. Virunga Lodge is When we did it, it was about a 4-hour drive from Kigali, and the roads are very good. So again, here you would be in a luxury safari Land Rover. Your lodges are very small, 10 rooms, 15 rooms, etc. But they all have really beautiful views. So this lodge actually celebrated their 15th anniversary birthday towards the end of last year, and they've got big plans on giving the lodge a little bit of a facelift and just a fresh feeling. Then Bisati by Wilderness Lodge is teeny tiny with only 6 rooms. This is Rwanda's first kind of eco-sensitive safari experience or lodge. It is probably one of the 2 most upmarket lodges in the area. Oh, and here all the sort of inclusions are the same as with the lodges on the Ugandan side. They are all inclusive. They include laundry, all your meals, all your drinks. And then, of course, your gorilla permits are still separate, which I'll get to in a minute. The one and only Nungwe House is also one of the, other than Bisati, one of the most upmarket lodges in the area. The nice thing is the fact that they have a bit more rooms. It's a really good group option, and a lot of the focus at this lodge is the wellness and kind of nature aspect to all experiences. Back to the smaller properties, Sabinyo Silverback Lodge. Sabinyo is one of the gorilla names actually, and they've named a lodge after it. Absolutely beautiful rooms, beautiful gardens, also quite a lot of stairs to get up to this main region or main reception area. Once you are in the reception area, it's very easy to get to the various rooms. If you do have an older guest or someone with mobility issues, there is almost like a staff entrance that you can take the guest to if they are not work or if they cannot climb the stairs. Then just in terms of activities in and around the area other than gorilla trekking, Kigali has so much to offer. And like I said, it's an extremely clean place. So a city tour in the city is actually very interesting. It does also cover all the highlights if you do not have a lot of time in the city itself. And it does tell you quite a lot about the genocide which happened 25 years ago. An interesting little fact is that the first Saturday of every month, in the morning, the entire country, including the president, has to come out for a few hours and clean. Whether it is their public spaces, their schools, their churches, their homes, everybody has to clean. I thought that was quite fun. Then the Genocide Museum, if I'm not mistaken, the museum has free entry. They run off of donations, and it really, again, it's kind of one of those strange experiences where you absolutely have to go and see what it was all about, and you have to support the community by going, but it's not a happy experience. You walk out of there and you think, how can people do this to one another? But it really is part of the rich Rwandan history. And once you've been in the museum and you interact with the locals afterwards, you realize how far they have come as a country in such a short time. Now, to the gorilla trekking. What I'll do after the presentation is I will send you our gorilla kind of manual, because there's a lot of information to take in when it comes to gorillas. They are very strict as to what you can and what you cannot do. For anything in Uganda and Rwanda relating to the gorillas, again, you have to book about a year in advance, purely because there are only between 80 and 90 permits available each day. So if you do not get a permit, then of course you have to give them a different date. So your permit prices at the moment, and there is talk that it is going to go up towards the middle and the end of this year. In Uganda, you are looking at $600 US dollars per person per day. It is very expensive. Every last cent goes back into the conservation of the endangered mountain gorilla. In Rwanda, however, for the exact same experience, you are going to pay $1,500 US dollar per person per day for that permit. The experiences are very similar. They say that Rwanda is a little bit easier because of the terrain, where Uganda, you have to be a little bit more fit. That being said, you do not have to be fit at all. When I did it, I had an 80-year-old in my group, and we just took it very slowly, and she did not have any trouble whatsoever to make the trek. So basically, you go and you hike in search of a gorilla family. So in the morning, everybody gets divided up into groups of 8 people per group, and there's 10 groups of these 8 people per group, and each group goes to a gorilla family, and you go with an armed ranger, you go with a guide, and you go with trackers and porters, and the porters are there to help you. They help you carry your backpacks, they help you carry your lunch, your water, etc. So at the end, you go with quite a big team, but you cannot go more than 8 people. And each gorilla family only sees one group of people per day. These gorillas are very much like us. They are very susceptible to human respiratory viruses. So, for example, they can easily contract COVID-19. They could easily get the flu. So the fewer human interaction they have, the better. Also because they know humans in the past to be poachers, so they can get very stressed if they see a lot of people during the day. And that's why there are very strict measures in place that only small groups of people go to one group of gorilla family per day. And please do warn your guests if they are sick at all with a flu or a cough or a runny nose. The Rwandan and Ugandan authorities will not allow them to go on the trek, and they will not be refunded their money on the day. Once they've paid that permit, it is paid. There are very, very few circumstances when the governments will actually pay the permit prices back. What we often do is, if we've seen that there's been a cancellation, we try and resell those permits to then try and give money back, but that very seldomly happens. So please do keep that in mind. Generally, if you manage to get a permit for a certain day, you automatically get accommodation as well, because the number of rooms available in the 2 areas equal the number of permits available. So if you get the one, the other one is almost guaranteed, if that makes sense. Then your actual hike can be anything from 40 minutes to 8 hours. You cannot tell the ranger that you want an easy one, because these are wild animals that we are going to look for in the bush, so they can be absolutely anywhere. If there is a client with mobility issues, or maybe a disabled client, you can always make a plan. There's also the option of getting an African helicopter, which is where 4 local guys carry you all the way to when you see the gorillas. So you can actually make that dream come true for people that cannot walk properly. And then lastly, once you finally get to the gorillas, you have exactly 1 hour to spend with them. They are completely in the wild. You have to maintain about 7 meters distance between you and them, but sometimes they actually come up and touch you. They don't feel threatened by us as humans, so they are quite curious, and they might come up and play with your hair or stroke your back or whatever the case might be. but we as humans always just need to keep our distance from them. In terms of what you need to take with you, you need good hiking shoes or running shoes with good grip, because it can be quite slippery. We always say long trousers and a long sleeve shirt, something that is thin, that can breathe. Because you are in a rainforest, it can get quite cold and wet, but also because you are walking, you are sweating and it gets a little bit warm. But you do need that cover on your skin because some of the plants have thorns and can sting you. And there are lots of insects around that can bite. Nothing that will harm you, but it might just itch and be a little bit annoying. Then always bring your hat, bring your camera. All types of photography is allowed. They just don't like it when the flash goes off. So flash photography is not permitted. And then we recommend that you take at least 2.5 liters of water with you, because you can get easily hydrated. And once you get excited, you completely forget to drink water. So it is a very, very special experience. Like I said earlier, it is quite a lot of information to take in, but I will send you a whole lot of information after this webinar to give you a good idea or more of an overview into all of the areas with maps and photos. And I'll share some of my gorilla photos and videos with you. And then please, if you have any questions at any time, feel free to reach out to Jefferson and the team or to me. I love to talk about these destinations, and I would even love it more to just go and show it to you. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Thanks a lot for the wonderful presentation. Obrigado todo mundo por ter assistido aí até o final.